If there's one thing Canadians love more than apologizing for no reason, it's pretending everything is fine while the house burns down around us. Enter Donald Trump, the man who loves tariffs almost as much as he loves Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Stephen Harper, the former Prime Minister who recently dropped a bombshell. He said that Canadians should be prepared to be impoverished to save the country from annexation. Yes, you heard that right. Impoverished. As in, cancel your Disney Plus subscription, skip the guac on your burrito, and maybe start considering whether your dog's food is also your dinner. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This isn't just about tariffs or national pride. It's about how Canadian politicians are using this economic threat as an opportunity to score political brownie points while the working class gets left holding the bag. Let's start with the man of the hour, Donald Trump. In 2018, he imposed a 25% tariff on steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum, citing national security concerns. The tariffs lasted less than a year before America cried uncle. Fast forward to 2025, and he's at it again, threatening even steeper tariffs on Canadian goods. Why? Because Trump has always believed tariffs are the key to American prosperity, even if they're essentially a tax on consumers. Here he is signing an executive order on steel and aluminum tariffs.
Reimpose that 25% ad valorem tariff rate on imports of steel, and it's presented for your signature now.
Okay. Do you understand what that means?
Is he asking for us or is he asking for himself? The irony is that tariffs are supposed to protect domestic industries, but they often end up hurting the very people they're meant to help. Now, Trump's tariffs could disrupt North America's integrated supply chains, raising prices and hurting industries on both sides of the border. But for Trump, it's all part of the plan to make America rich again. Meanwhile, Canada, with 76% of our exports going to the US, is left wondering if we are about to become the 51st state. Enter Stephen Harper, Canada's former Prime Minister, who recently said that if he was still Prime Minister, he would be prepared to impoverish the country, not to be annexed, if that was the option he was facing. On the surface, it sounds like a rallying cry for national pride. But let's break it down. What does impoverished actually mean? Are we talking about skipping avocado toast, or are we talking about a significant drop in our standard of living? Given that Canada already leads the G7 in household debt per capita, it's safe to say we're not exactly in a position to absorb real economic pain. Harper's warning raises an important question. Who's going to shoulder this economic burden? The young people? Well, 43% of young Canadians have already realized that the older generations sold them out and are happy to become American under the right conditions. The working class? They're already lining up at the food banks and struggling to afford shelter. Meanwhile, Harper, who's wealthy and comfortable, can afford to have his morals. But for the average Canadian, this isn't about national pride. It's about survival. Let's not kid ourselves. Canadian politicians are using this tariff threat as an opportunity to score political points. Justin Trudeau, who spent years mocking Trump and suggesting he only won the recent election due to misogyny, is now scrambling to respond. He appointed his fentanyl czar, Kevin Brosseau, but critics argue it's more of a political move than a substantive policy change. As Sam Cooper, Canada's top journalist on fentanyl and money laundering, points out,
that the U.S. government, look, they're not going to be fooled if you put a Justin Trudeau office lackey in that position.
Meanwhile, Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, is largely taking the same stance as Trudeau when it comes to retaliatory tariffs, arguing that Canada must fight back with equal tariffs. But let's be real, Canada can't win a trade war with the US. Our economy is too dependent on them, and we spent decades neglecting the industries and infrastructure that could make us self-sufficient. Instead, we've doubled down on policies that make us weaker, blocking pipelines, juicing the housing market, and relying on unsustainable immigration to prop up the economy. Here's the harsh truth. If Trump's tariffs go full throttle, Canada's GDP could tank by 4 to 6%. That's brutal. But the real cost will be borne by working class Canadians, the ones who can't afford to buy a home, who are undercut on wages by immigrants, and who are already struggling to make ends meet. As Harper talks about impoverishment and Trudeau talks about standing up to Trump, it's easy to forget that these politicians won't feel the brunt of the economic hurricane about to hit Canada. Take Vancouver, for example. The average 3-bedroom home costs nearly $2 million, despite the city having no real industry. Why? Because Vancouver has become a global hub for money laundering, with drug money from China flowing through its casinos and into the banking system. TD Bank, one of Canada's big 5 banks, was recently fined billions of dollars for a money laundering scandal. But instead of addressing these issues, Canadian politicians are more focused on scoring political points. So what's the end game? If Trump moves forward with these tariffs, it could break Canada as we know it. Alberta will likely start talking about secession, and Quebec will float the idea of leaving. The rest of us will be left wondering how we got here and how to work with the remaining pieces. The truth is, Canada's economic problems are decades in the making. We've fallen in love with cheap debt, juiced the housing market, and relied on the US as our sole trading partner. Now we're paying the price. Harper's warning about impoverishment is a wake-up call, but it's also a reminder that Canadian politicians have failed to prepare us for this moment. Instead of building a resilient economy, they've doubled down on policies that make us vulnerable. And while they talk about national pride and standing up to Trump, the working class is left to pick up the pieces. Remember that. Canada is at a crossroads. We can either double down on the policies that got us here, or we can take a hard look in the mirror and make some tough decisions. Trump's tariffs are a symptom of a larger problem, a problem we've been ignoring for far too long. The question is, will we rise to the challenge, or will we continue to sleepwalk into economic oblivion? One thing's for sure, the next decade is going to be tough. But if we play our cards right, it could also be the moment we finally wake up and take control of our future. Because if we don't, we might just find ourselves as the 51st state, playing four-down football and drinking Dunkin' coffee out of foam cups. So are Canadians ready to be impoverished for national pride? Only time will tell. But one thing's for certain, the working class will be the ones paying the price. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video or you have some thoughts for me, please let me know in the comments section. Also, I appreciate all the engagement I'm getting. So thank you for everyone who's liking, subscribing, and sharing our content. It means the world to me. Thanks for watching, everybody.